Are you truly yourself, or just a collection of names and roles given to you at birth? A son, a daughter, a worker, a believer, a citizen. These words feel natural because they are repeated so often, like a spell cast in childhood. But if you strip them away, what remains? Do you end like a house without walls, or do you continue like the air that flows between those walls? The story of Michael Talbot, a man who cracked the fragile shell of what we call reality, begins here at the edge of what you thought was unquestionable. When Talbot leaned forward and told his audience, there is no separation between electrons. Furthermore, there's no separation between people. He was not offering mysticism, but detonating a charge beneath the floorboards of science itself. Imagine standing in a room whose walls you believe to be solid, only to discover they are nothing more than painted glass. At first, you feel awe. Then, terror creeps in. Because if the walls are illusions, then so is the security you once trusted. The world you thought you knew, the world that rewarded obedience and punished rebellion, is suddenly revealed as theater, and you begin to wonder who is writing the script. This is where Talbot's life and work strike like a lightning bolt against the night sky. He did not merely speculate about consciousness or toy with the language of quantum physics. He pointed towards something disturbing, that our sense of being separate selves, confined to bodies, trapped in personal struggles, may itself be the greatest illusion of all. We are told that life is a competition of individuals, nations, religions, races. Yet if the universe is holographic, if every fragment contains the whole, then you are not merely an isolated spark. You are the entire flame. REFRECTED. Pause for a moment. Think about the aquarium Talbot described. You see two monitors, one showing the fish from the front, the other from the side. Without knowing there is a single fish behind the glass, you believe you are looking at two creatures, unrelated and independent. This, he said, is what human perception is like. We stare at surfaces, convinced of divisions, while behind the veil everything is one continuous organism. The frightening implication is that governments, religions, and media play the role of the technicians, deciding what parts of the aquarium we see, which angles are broadcast, which fragments become the truth, and so long as we never step outside the glass, we never discover the whole fish. If this sounds abstract, bring it into your daily life. Consider how often you feel alone, as if your thoughts are locked inside your head. Now imagine instead that every thought you have is already woven into the fabric of existence, shared across an invisible network. When you sense a loved one in danger, when a dream reveals tomorrow's event, when you feel the eyes of someone watching before you turn, these are not accidents, Talbot argued, but cracks in the wall, moments when the projection flickers and something beyond slips through. But why would such truths be hidden? The answer is control. Separation is the most effective story ever told. Tell people they are isolated, and they will cling to authorities who promise protection. Convince them they are powerless, and they will submit to systems that claim to know better. Persuade them that psychic connection, intuition, and resonance are fantasies, and you have ensured that the true architecture of human freedom remains buried under ridicule. For centuries, this story has been the foundation of power. Without it, the structure crumbles. Talbot's work was not just about physics, not even about philosophy. It was about the architecture of perception. If the brain itself functions like a holographic decoder of what we see and hear is not reality, but a reconstruction of waveforms, then perception is no longer passive. It is participatory. Your expectations, your fears, your beliefs, all act like frequencies shaping the image you call the world. Suddenly, life is not a fixed script written by forces outside you. It is a co-created projection, alive and responsive, The illusion of separation collapses, and a more dangerous, liberating truth rises. You are not a spectator. You are the projector. Yet here lies the paradox. To glimpse this truth is exhilarating, but it is also destabilizing. If every wall is illusion, then where do you place your feet? If every boundary is artificial, then what becomes of your identity? The collapse of separation is not a gentle revelation, but a shattering of categories, nation, family, self, even death. Each dissolves into the field, and with dissolution comes both freedom and fear. This is why Talbot's message unsettled the establishment. It was not merely speculative, it was practical. A population aware of its own non-local, interconnected consciousness cannot be ruled in the same way. They do not respond to the same manipulations. They begin to write their own scripts. The introduction of his work feels less like reading a book and more like standing before a mirror that suddenly cracks, revealing not your reflection, but an endless expanse of stars behind it. You are not who you thought you were. You are not where you thought you stood. And the stage you believed to be life is but a play of light, projected on glass. Before we move forward, pause once again. Ask yourself, if reality is a hologram, who runs the projector? And more importantly, what role do you play in shaping the image that appears? That is where the journey begins. If the introduction felt like a crack in the aquarium glass, then here, we step closer and place our fingers on the fracture. The shards are still intact, but the light bends strangely through them, showing shapes and shadows we had never noticed before. Talbot's vision of reality is not simply an academic exercise, it is a map of power, of illusion, of how truth is sculpted into walls and ceilings that keep us obedient. And to truly see these patterns, we must look at the core themes woven through his ideas. The first theme is separation, the great lie. It begins so early in life that we rarely question it. You are told you are your name, your skin, your country. You are told that the person across from you is different, perhaps even dangerous. This story of division has been endlessly useful for those who wish to govern. Nations rise and fall on it. Wars are waged in its name. Religions preach it as doctrine, turning us against them. But when Talbot leaned forward and said, "There is no separation between people," he wasn't making a sentimental statement about unity. He was revealing that the very foundation of our social architecture rests on a deception. Look around at modern society. The internet was promised as a tool of liberation, a vast web that would connect every human being, and in a way, it has. Yet peel back the curtain and you see its origins in military projects, in systems designed not for freedom but for surveillance. Social media offered intimacy, a digital hearth around which we could gather. Yet what emerged was something else, a marketplace of emotion, where fear and outrage are harvested like crops, each post a pulse of energy feeding into algorithms designed not to liberate but to control. This is not far from Talbot's aquarium analogy. We are given screens to watch, told that what appears there is the totality of the world. The fish swims unseen, the whole reality withheld. While we argue about the angles, did you see what appeared on your screen? One person says, "Yes, but mine shows something different," replies another. And all the while, those who control the cameras decide what we see and what we never will. Another core theme is entanglement. In physics, it is the strange, almost mystical phenomenon in which two particles separated by vast distances remain linked, responding to one another instantly. For Einstein, this was spooky action at a distance. For Talbot, it was proof that the universe is one indivisible whole. If particles can remain connected across galaxies, why not minds across human bodies? Why not events across time? Suddenly, telepathy, synchronicity, intuition phenomena dismissed as nonsense become inevitable. They are not. exceptions to reality, but revelations of it. Yet official science, backed by institutional power, has long dismissed such possibilities. Why? Because a population that believes itself interconnected is a population not easily divided, not easily managed. If consciousness is non-local, then privacy itself dissolves, and with it, the illusion that authorities can control what we think or feel. To keep this suppressed, the institutions ridicule psychic phenomena as superstition while secretly funding decades of research into its applications. The CIA's experiments in remote viewing, military programs exploring telepathy, all of it hidden in classified vaults. All while the public is told it is fantasy. What is denied to the masses becomes weaponized by the few. Talbot's third theme is perception. Imagine the brain not as the generator of consciousness, but as a receiver, decoding waveforms from a field that surrounds us. The mathematics of holography, Fourier transforms, appear not only in light and sound, but in the very way the brain interprets sensory data. This means that what we see, hear, and touch may not be reality itself, but the brain's reconstruction of frequencies. Reality, in this sense, is less a solid wall and more a shimmering image projected on a curtain of perception. Change the frequencies, and the projection changes. Ancient rituals, mantras, chants, these may not have been superstitions but technologies, ways of influencing the holographic field. Modern advertising, subliminal frequencies, sonic warfare, these to reveal hidden science of shaping perception. Whoever controls the code controls the projection. Here the story deepens into something chilling. If perception is programmable, then society itself is a ritual, a constant conditioning of the field. Political leaders act as high priests, not guiding but distracting, repeating ceremonies of authority to remind the masses who holds the power. Schools do not teach intuition or the possibility of psychic connection. They teach obedience, the memorization of sanctioned truths. Media bombards us with fear because fear is fuel. A frequency that sustains the projection of separation. Every news broadcast, every advertisement, every ritual of statecraft, these are not random. They are deliberate encodings, and yet, woven through all of this, Talbot left us with a liberating insight. The projection is not fixed. Just as to particles respond across light years, so to do human beings respond across time and space. Just as a hologram contains the whole within every part, so too does each of us contain the universe. This means that belief, expectation, and imagination are not trivial. They are code. To expect is to help create. To fear is to help project. To believe is to feed the field. What you see on your screen is not the final truth. It is an echo, shaped by your own vibration as much as by the institutions that broadcast the image. The question then becomes, if reality is a projection, and you are not merely a viewer but a participant, what frequencies are you sending into the field? Do you echo fear, scarcity, isolation, or do you encode resonance, gratitude, and connection? This is not spiritual sentiment. It is physics as much as it is philosophy, and it is perhaps the most radical message hidden within Talbot's work. That control only functions when you consent to watch the screens and believe them to be the whole dot in a world where politics feels like theater, where technology promises freedom but delivers surveillance, where media feeds fear while dismissing connection. Talbot's vision tears open the stage curtain. Behind it, you see not chaos but pattern, not fragments but a whole. Reality is holographic, consciousness is non-local, perception is programmable, and control depends on your willingness to believe in the illusion of separation. If the first two parts showed us the cracks in the glass and the mechanics of the aquarium, this third part leads us into a realm even stranger, the symbols carved into the tank itself. For while Talbot spoke in the language of physics and consciousness, his message resonates with something much older, something that hums through the history of civilizations. Beneath the scientific metaphors lies a symbolic continuity. a hidden grammar of reality expressed in rituals, symbols, and mythologies that repeat across ages as if humanity itself were caught in a ritual. Hologram. Consider for a moment the eye that stares from the pyramid on the back of a dollar bill. Why has the eye, the pyramid, the laurel wreath appeared again and again across empires separated by oceans and centuries? The Egyptians painted the eye of Horus on their temples. The Greeks crowned their heroes with laurel. The Romans carved eagles above their standards. And in the modern era we find the same symbols preserved on flags, currencies, government buildings. These repetitions are not coincidence. They are ritual technologies, visual keys designed to remind both rulers and ruled. That power does not flow from individuals, but from a continuity of hidden architecture. Talbot's holographic vision makes sense of this. If reality itself is a projection, then symbols are not mere decoration. They are programming codes, frequency triggers that speak to the subconscious, tapping into the field beneath perception. A pyramid is not just a stone structure. It is a projection of hierarchy encoded into form. An eye is not just an organ of sight. It is a signal that surveillance, omniscience, the unseen gaze is woven into the system itself. When repeated over centuries, these symbols embed themselves into the collective hologram, becoming invisible to those who live inside it, yet quietly shaping expectation and belief. Why do royal coronations repeat the same structures century after century? Why do funerals of state echo the same rhythms, whether in ancient Egypt, medieval Europe, or modern America? Because ritual is not theater, it is programming. A coronation does not merely celebrate a new monarch. It encodes the idea that power is divine, that authority descends from beyond the human, that hierarchy is eternal. A funeral does not merely honor the dead. It encodes the idea that continuity persists beyond the grave, that institutions outlive individuals, that death itself is swallowed into the holographic field of power. In this sense, bloodlines are not just genetics, they are holographic carriers of memory. Families that maintain ritual continuity across generations act like living hard drives, preserving not merely wealth, but frequency, not merely history, but resonance. When we look at dynasties, secret societies, and elite networks, we often assume their continuity is financial or political. But from Talbot's perspective, their continuity is ritualistic, symbolic. They preserve the holographic code. They ensure that the same symbols echo across centuries so that the projection remains stable, so that the fish is never fully seen. This sheds light on why modern spectacles, Olympic ceremonies, presidential inaugurations, even televised funerals feel strangely familiar, eerily archetypal. They echo ancient processions, torchlight rituals, sacrifices at the altar. What we call spectacle is, at its core, ritual technology. The public consumes it as entertainment, but on another level. It encodes frequencies into the collective field. The fireworks, the music, the chants, all of these work on the subconscious like mantras, shaping how we perceive ourselves, our nations. Our place in the aquarium. Talbot's aquarium analogy returns here in symbolic form. We are like those who mistake the flickering images for truth. But in this layer, the flickers are not only political narratives or scientific dogmas. They are symbols etched into stone and currency, rituals repeated in cathedrals and stadiums, spectacles broadcast on screens, and behind them all lies the same intention: to maintain the illusion of separation, to stabilize the holographic projection in a way that keeps power flowing in one direction. Yet there is a deeper irony. The very symbols used to control may also serve as keys to awakening. The pyramid that encodes hierarchy can also be seen as the ascent of consciousness, from base matter to divine apex. The eye that encodes surveillance can also be read as the eye of awareness, the inner vision that pierces illusion. In a holographic universe, meaning is not fixed. Symbols are like mirrors. What they reflect depends on the frequency you bring to them. This is why secret societies place such importance on initiation, on teaching their members to see symbols in one way while the masses see them in another. A ritual is never only what it appears to be. It is a layered transmission. For the uninitiated, it is entertainment, tradition, or superstition. For the initiated, it is programming code, a way to interface with a holographic field. And this is perhaps the most unsettling implication of Talbert's work. If the universe is holographic, then rituals are not mere theater, they are engineering. They are attempts to adjust the frequencies of reality itself. When you begin to see this, history itself transforms. No longer do you look at empires as disconnected chapters. You begin to notice the same actors, wearing new costumes, the same play repeated under different titles. The eye, the pyramid, the laurel, the crown, these are not relics of the past. They are the holographic scaffolding of the present. They ensure that no matter how the aquarium changes shape, the fish remains unseen. But if the hologram encodes separation and control, then what happens when enough people see through the symbols? What happens when coronations are recognized as rituals of programming? When national spectacles are seen as manipulations of frequency? When ancient symbols are reinterpreted not as tools of hierarchy but as reminders of unity, the hologram cracks, the projection falters, and in that faltering, the possibility of a new projection, a new encoding, emerges. This is the deeper symbolic narrative. We are not just watching a show, we are participating in a ritual. The aquarium walls are carved with symbols, and every time we bow to them, sing to them, or even ignore them, we contribute to their power. But every time we reinterpret them, every time we awaken to their dual meanings, we weaken their hold. For in a holographic universe, control is never absolute. It is always participatory, and awareness itself is the first act of liberation. So, having walked among the symbols and their repetitions, having seen how rituals function not as decoration but as holographic engineering, we arrive at the next question. How do we take these insights and apply them to our daily lives? How do we integrate the awareness of the hologram into choices, emotions, and actions in the ordinary flow of existence? Up until now, the journey has been cosmic, even unsettling. We have looked at illusions of separation, at the aquarium that traps us, at the symbolic scaffolding that encodes power into our very perception of reality. But what use is such knowledge if it remains abstract? If Talbert's vision is to mean anything, it must descend into the practical, into the way we live, breathe, feel, and choose in the ordinary currents of our daily existence. For if reality is holographic, then every small gesture, every thought, every feeling, every act of attention becomes not trivial, but fundamental. The first integration is to recognize that fear is not just an emotion. Fear is few. It is the raw energy that sustains the projection of separation. Watch the news for an hour, and what do you see? Crisis, danger, violence, uncertainty. These are not simply stories. They are rituals of frequency, constant reminders that you are small, vulnerable, powerless. Fear narrows your field of awareness. It collapses the hologram into fragments, convincing you that you must cling to authority, that you must fight against your neighbor, that you must remain in survival mode. The system thrives on this. As long as fear governs, the aquarium remains intact. But Talbert's message whispers another possibility. If fear is fuel for the system, then love, gratitude, and creativity are frequencies that rewrite the projection. Every act of art, every burst of laughter, every moment of authentic connection is more than a personal joy. It is a holographic shift. It encodes the field with resonance that cannot be controlled, frequencies that ripple outward and destabilize the machinery of separation. You may not see it immediately, but just as to entangled particles respond across galaxies, so too does your vibration affect the whole. This is why ancient traditions placed such emphasis on ritual, song, and dance. They were not entertainment. They were technologies of resonance, ways to tune the field toward harmony rather than fear. Today, those same tools remain available to us. A shared meal, a song sung together, a circle of people meditating in silence. These are not trivial acts. They are counter-programming, cracks in the aquarium glass, if state funerals and political inaugurations encode obedience, then our everyday rituals can encode liberation. Another layer of integration comes in how we understand identity. If memory is holographic, distributed across the field, then who you are is not confined to the narrow story of your past. The traumas, failures, and limitations you carry are not the final word. They are distortions of a larger pattern. Fuzzy are fragments of a whole that still contains clarity. This means healing is not about rewriting one neuron, one scar, one memory. It is about tuning the receiver differently, about adjusting the frequency through which you decode reality. Practices like meditation, breathwork, or even simple reflection act as adjustments to the receiver, allowing glimpses of other realities encoded in the field. And if perception itself is holographic decoding, then what you see is never absolute. This is both humbling and empowering. It means that arguments about truth are often arguments about decoding. It means that despair, when it feels like the only possible reality, is only one interpretation of the field. To shift attention, to shift vibration, is to shift the image itself, suddenly. Empowerment is no longer about controlling external events, but about reclaiming your role as co-creator of the projection. In real-world terms, this transforms even the smallest choices. When you scroll through social media, are you reinforcing separation, anger, comparison? Or are you choosing to engage with content that uplifts, connects, creates? When you speak, are your words vibrations of division or frequencies of understanding? When you wake in the morning, do you begin by feeding fear or by setting a vibration of gratitude? These questions are not sentimental. They are practical. For in a holographic universe, what you focus on is amplified, encoded, projected. This brings us to the most radical integration: withdrawal. If the aquarium is sustained by your attention, then every moment you refuse to feed the spectacle weakens it. You cannot defeat the system by fighting it on its terms, because its terms are built from fear and division. But you can starve it. You can refuse to play the game. You can withdraw your energy from the endless cycles of outrage, conflict, and spectacle, and instead invest it in creation, connection, and awareness. This is not passivity, it is strategic refusal. To stop feeding the illusion is to weaken it at its roots. Talbot hinted at this when he said that consciousness itself is non-local, woven into the structure of reality. If this is true, then you do not need permission, technology, or authority to access it. The tools are already inside you. Awareness is the first step. Intuition is the second. Action follows naturally, and every act, however small, ripples through the field. Here, the cosmic meets the intimate. The same principle that governs entangled particles governs your relationship with yourself and others. The same holographic code that encodes galaxies encodes your morning breath. The same frequencies that sustain the aquarium can be reversed, redirected, reprogrammed through acts of love, creativity, and truth. This is where philosophy becomes practice, and practice becomes liberation. Fear is architecture. Love is demolition. Awareness is escape. Every ritual of the system is a call to obedience. Every ritual you create consciously, whether through art, joy, or silence, is a step toward a new projection. So now we arrive at the threshold. Having seen the illusions of separation, the symbols of power, and the frequencies that sustain the hologram, the question becomes, what do we do with this knowledge? How do we move from understanding to transformation, from witnessing the aquarium to breaking the glass entirely? We have traveled far from Talbot's whisper that there is no separation, through the aquarium that traps our perception, into the symbols etched into the walls of power, and finally into the practical ways we can shift the projection itself. But now we stand at the edge, where knowledge must turn into action, where philosophy must become transformation. For if the universe is holographic, then this text, these words, are not just reflections, they are frequencies, entering your field, ripples in the projection you are co-creating at this very moment. The most dangerous truth Talbot left behind was not that reality is holographic, not that consciousness is non-local, not even that perception is programmable. It was that you are not a spectator, you are not a passive recipient of the show. You are the projector, you are the code, you are the hidden. Architecture the system has worked tirelessly to obscure. The question has never been whether the aquarium exists, the question is whether you will keep staring at the screens or turn your head too. Glimpse the fish. Think about it. The prison door has never been locked. It has been constructed from stories, from symbols, from fear repeated until it felt like truth. The bars are made of words, like nation, race, normal, impossible. The gods are rituals disguised as entertainment, ceremonies disguised as governance, technologies disguised as convenience. Yet all of these rely on your consent. They require your belief, your energy, your attention. Without it, the aquarium cracks. This is why awakening is not the end, but the beginning. To awaken is to see that walls are glass, that the images are projections, that the symbols are codes. But to awaken fully is to take responsibility for the projection itself. If every thought, every emotion, every expectation encodes the hologram, then you are already participating, whether you realize it or not. The challenge is to participate consciously, to encode not fear but love, not division but connection, not despair but vision. You are infinite consciousness, temporarily experiencing limits. You are the universe folded into a single point of view. You are the fish and the screen, the aquarium and the observer. And once you remember this, once you reclaim your role as co-creator, the power of the system begins to dissolve. For what authority can stand against a population that knows its thoughts shape the field? What institution can control a species that understands its unity across time and space? What illusion can survive once the audience refuses to believe in the script? Talbot's death left questions unanswered, but perhaps that was inevitable. The holographic nature of reality resists final answers, because every answer is a fragment of a greater whole. The task was never to provide certainty. The task was to open cracks, to let the light of a deeper truth seep through. He did not leave us with doctrines, but with a map, a series of metaphors, analogies, and warnings that point not to himself, but to the field we all share. The aquarium remains, but the glass is thinner than we believed. And so, the transformational call is simple but profound. Stop waiting. Stop waiting for permission, for institutions, for saviors. Stop waiting for a science to validate what you already feel in your bones. Stop waiting for proof that consciousness is non-local, for you have already lived it in dreams, intuitions, synchronicities. Stop waiting for rituals to tell you what is sacred, for the sacred is already pulsing in your breath, in your heartbeat, in the silence between your thoughts. Your task is not to destroy the aquarium, but to see it, to realize that the water is not a prison, but a field, that the glass is not eternal, but fragile, that the screens are not the whole, but fragments. Your task is to break the spell of separation by living as though unity were already true because it is. Speak to others as though they are extensions of yourself because they are. Create as though your art reshapes the field because it does. Love as the love is the frequency that cracks the code because it is. This is the freedom Talbot hinted at, the freedom that cannot be granted by governments, religions, or technologies. is the freedom that comes from knowing the show only runs as long as you believe in it. The freedom that arrives when you realize you're not a puppet, but the author of the script. And so, as this exploration ends, I invite you to pause and breathe, not as an isolated organism, but as a node of infinite consciousness. Feel the hologram hung around you, within you, as you, and remember, every thought you hold, every dream you imagine, every act of courage you take is not trivial. It is creation, it is projection, it is liberation. The illusion was always the trap. The truth is that you have always been free. The question is no longer whether you will awaken. The question is what you will create once you do.